I kind of had put my toe, whatever you want to say, into the various areas that I was interested in. So I got involved in many cancer organizations, got involved in many education. I became a regent. And I remember saying to them when I was appointed as a regent, I'm an okay regent now, but I'm going to be a great regent when I turn 60 because I'll have more time, you know? And I found myself, you know, having a portfolio of things that I loved. Not everything I put my toe in turned out to be something I was passionate about. So, you know, I resigned, you know. I remember resigning right before Thanksgiving because I thought for once I want a vacation where I don't have to take 50 scripts with me, you know. And then the transition, it took about 8 months till they found a replacement, but the transition was really quite simple. I know that sounds funny to say. I felt as if I was in college again. I felt as if, I should say graduating college maybe, because everything was new. I had an enthusiasm and a curiosity. I didn't know a lot about cancer research. I didn't know a lot about education. And it was like everything was thrilling. And so I think change is very good. I think people are naturally maybe apprehensive about it, but I think it's very good, and I think it keeps you young. And that's really the truth.
You know, what I loved is oftentimes in your industry, but in general, but particularly your industry, oftentimes people are asked to leave when they don't even know they're going to be going. And in your case, you controlled the story. I mean, you went in proactively, so I just loved it, and I'm sure the audience, and we want to talk about philanthropy and all these things, but they all kind of interrelate to who you are. What was the reaction when you walked in and said, I'm going to be leaving, as opposed to generally whoever they are, the men in power or women in power, come in and tell you when you're leaving?
I do think you should control your own story, you know, I remember telling Tom Freston, who was my immediate superior, and then telling Sumner Redstone, who was the head of the whole company, that I was going to leave, and they didn't believe me. And they all thought I had another job. And I kept saying, I don't have another job. I'm not going. For some reason, they're obsessed with Disney. Do not ask me why, because I didn't know anyone at Disney even. But it was like obsessed. And then they got obsessed with Warner's. They just kept moving around. And so I said, I'm not leaving to go to another job. I'm leaving, but I'm not leaving to go to another job. And so Sumner Redstone put, you know, a piece of paper in front of me that I had to sign, which I happily signed. I mean, that I wouldn't go to another entertainment company for a decade. Or I don't even know if the document is legal. But I mean, I said, what do you want me to sign? I'll sign it. I don't care. I think, you know, I think it's sometimes hard for people to realize that you want another life. You know, and I didn't just want another life. I want to add this also because I wanted another life, not just because I was tired of doing what I was doing, and I'd done it, and I felt as if I was repeating myself, and I didn't have any more goals. And I wanted another life because I wanted to give back. I also wanted another life for personal reasons. I didn't want to work 7 days a week. I wanted for once in my life to go on a vacation and just say, hey, I really like it here, I'd like to stay another day. I didn't want to be on the phone 5 hours a day every time I was gone. So I think as you get older, there's different chapters in life. And I'm now about to be 75, and I'm so grateful for the 15 years that I've had, not just because of what I've been able to do, and not just because it is my favorite time of life, but I'm really grateful for the quality of friendships that I've been able to develop. I'm really grateful for the time I've spent with my husband and my family, my boys. I'm really grateful for human intimacy that, you know, is harder to achieve. I had it, I'm not saying I didn't, but harder to achieve when you have, you know, you're gonna have lunch with a friend from 1 to 1:45. And at 1:45 you have a meeting, and then at 2:30, and you're home at 11. And there's nothing wrong with that. I loved what I did. And so I don't have anything like, oh my God, what a hard life. Of course, work is thrilling and wonderful. This is a different kind of work, and I had more control and do have more control of my time.
And Sherry doesn't use the word retirement, she uses the word rewire, which I really loved. By the way, I took a few things out of your book, I'm going to be using them.
Yeah, you can.
So, women, not just in business, but women who are achieving in professions, etc. You talked about in your book that you were in a world. First of all, you had really no roadmap, you had no playbook. You talked about a world of constant conflict, tantrums, yelling. I suspect you never used this word, bullying sometimes, and yet you rose above it. Can you tell us how you did that?
Well, I think that people who are passionate often raise their voice. People who are passionate often yell. And once you understand that it's a style, I mean, that is different than somebody doing it to you personally. And I think the movie business, as any business, and actually I think scientists and movie directors and producers are a lot alike, because you do it for nothing, you know, because you're so passionate about what you do, and it takes a very long time to get a movie made. It takes a long time to get scientific discovery. The only difference is, and I always joke about this when we're doing work with Stand Up to Cancer, or UCLA Health, I always say, only in the movie business, so we'd get in a big fight and everybody would be screaming, we'd say, well, at least we're not curing cancer. So I think that if you keep calm, you keep focused, and you don't take it personally, and you realize that most of it just comes from passion or frustration, and in some cases from great insecurity.
You also told me, though, you look for in people deeper about, and you mentioned two of the individuals with whom you worked the longest, that you looked for integrity and care.
So I think you have to, number one, to add further that, pick your battles, but also, you know, sometimes people will say, well, so-and-so screamed, or so-and-so raised their voice, or whatever it is, and I do think those are personal styles. Some people never raise their voice, and they stab you in the back. So for me, one of the greatest things that I always looked for, and it could override just about anything, was if a person had integrity, if they were loyal, and if you knew that you could trust them. So, you know, people will always say, you know, Sherry worked with, you know, some difficult people. And I'll go, well, yes, but they were also, I used to call them mush face underneath, because they were so kind, you know, and they never did anything devious, and they were very loyal. And in my case, I'm very grateful for, obviously, the women I worked with, but as you said in the beginning, there weren't a lot. And I'm also really grateful, beyond belief, for the men I worked with who loved women, supported women, and I really have very, very, very few stories of any man who was dishonest, you know, and no stories of anybody that I worked closely with who wasn't supportive.
So I'm sure you, like I, was very touched with Sherry Staglin's story, very moving. So looking from the outside at someone like you, people see and saw a striking, confident, successful executive and individual, and yet you've openly talked about some insecurities, some complex relationships, and the fact that you actually sought help at some point, which was a turning point for you. Can you share that with us?
Sure. Well, first of all, I guess maybe there's somebody, but I've never met them, who comes out fully formed, fully secure, no fears, no insecurities. I don't know that person. I really, my hat's off to them. I was not that person. I came out with great insecurities, an enormous lack of self-esteem. I lost my father at a young age. When I was 9, I didn't understand what death was, so I just thought he had left because I was a bad girl. I had just enormous problems but they're kind of normal problems. Do you know, I didn't have those serious things. They're kind of normal problems. And so as the years went on, I started to realize that I didn't have the self-esteem that I needed, and that I didn't have the self-confidence, and that all sorts of things, which I won't go into because it was 5 years of therapy, but that I really needed to get help, that I wanted to change that. And so I went into therapy, and I went through analysis for 5 years, and it was the best gift I ever gave myself. And I'm not suggesting that everybody in this room should do this. I'm suggesting that everybody has problems of some sort. And whether it's your friend, your partner, whether it's a priest or a rabbi, there's nothing to be ashamed of. And there's a wonderful thing that I talked about and read once about, which is you look at somebody who's really confident, and you say, oh my God, they're fearless. They're never fearless. They overcome their fear, and they learn how to deal with it, and then they go on. And so for me, analysis was overcoming, the fears of a lifetime, the insecurities of a lifetime, which never go away. You just learn how to control them. So everyone knows this. You wake up one day, for no reason, you're back to high school, and you feel, gawky, and you're having a bad hair day, and you don't know what to wear. That's like how I would put it for women. For a guy, he's not feeling strong enough because they always get to wear the same thing. I'm so jealous of that. I can't even tell you. So for me, again, everybody is different. That was the gift that I gave myself, and that changed my life. And you're always a work in progress. You are always battling something. When I lost my mother, I had supposedly completed my analysis, and then, when she was struggling with cancer, I felt so helpless and so horrible. So I went back to see the doctor, and I'm sure he has a new wing in his house now, because I saw him. But you never get over these things. And so I'm very grateful. But again, I guess all I would say is, when you look at somebody, know that we're all the same, and that everybody has some battle of some sort. Some are chemical, some are, like schizophrenia, as you said, some of them are more chemically based, but, there's a lot of happy neurotic people walking around.
And I so appreciate it, because when we were together, we were talking about whether I could ask her anything, and Sherry said, please ask me any questions, because that's just who you are. So in 2004, 2005, you bowed out on your own terms. 2016, you received the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award at the Academy Awards. I actually watched the clip. Tom Cruise introduced Sherry. I was struck first by the standing ovation, and it was so genuine from everyone. But as they scanned the audience, so many of the faces of individuals with whom you had worked. What struck me more than anything was this genuine, pure expression of love and pride on the face of your husband, Billy Friedkin, and your 2 sons. So will you tell us about that evening?
Well, first of all, whenever I get mad at my husband, I look at that clip. Because the look on his face and the look on my son's face is something I actually get emotional talking about. So this is actually ties into your last question. I mean, it's funny, and it shows you. So I'm going to go into be quite honest about this. So one night I came home after a meeting, I guess. I had left the movie business about, 3 or 4 years before, and I must have been at some meeting for UCLA or whatever. And I came home, and my husband said, Sid Ganis, who is the president of the Academy, has called, and he said, it's extremely important, can you call him back tonight? So the first thing I thought of, because I'm a co-founder of Stand Up to Cancer, was he must be sick, because why else would he need to speak to me that night? So they're saying to wrap it up, so I'm going to just take a few minutes and tell this story because it's a good story. It's going to take a couple of minutes. But at any rate, I called him back, and it was about 11 o'clock, and I said, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And he laughed because he knew I was very involved in cancer research. He said, "No, I don't have cancer, Sherry. I'm calling to tell you that we have, the Academy unanimously voted to give you the Jean Herschel Award, which is the Academy Award for Philanthropy." And I went, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." I started to cry. And he said, "Well, I just have to know, will you accept it?" Because we wanted to announce it. I said, "Of course I'll accept it. Oh my God, I'm so excited." And I started crying. And then I turned to my husband, and he was so excited. And probably within 15 minutes, I went, "Oh my God, I can't accept this award." And Billy said, "Why?" I said, "There's 3 billion people watching this thing. You have to do this live. I can't do this." He said, "Don't be ridiculous." I said, No. You don't understand. I can't do this. It's not like talking to you. What if I trip? What if I fall? What will I say?" Billy said, "You'll get over it." He said, "I don't understand you." So I sat with it for a couple of days, and it didn't go away. I mean, the anxiety that I felt about that, other than when someone is sick, that's like, and God forbid, dying, it was like my 3rd greatest anxiety. Now, I'm ashamed to tell you that, but it's true. But when I finish with the story, you'll understand that it's not such a shameful thing. So I went to the therapist. I sat down. By the way, I was done with therapy. This is what a healthy person does. And so I was done. And he said to me, "What are you afraid of?" I said, "I'm afraid of everything." So he said, "There's 3 billion people. I've sat in that audience. People walk out, they say, 'How can she be wearing that terrible dress?' I said, 'Look how old she looks.' I said, they're mean. That's what they are. They're mean when you're watching it." And so I said, "I can't do this." And so he said, "Well, write the speech." I said, "I know what I want to say." It's all of 3 minutes, by the way. And so I write the speech. I come back, I said, "I don't feel any better." He said, "Well, get the dress." So I actually called someone to help me. I never had help. She got the dress. They got someone to put makeup on me. I never do that either. They got someone. I still didn't feel any better. So Billy said, "This is ridiculous." I said, "It's going to be the worst night of my life. I am going to screw this up so bad." By the way, this was 8 weeks before the Academy Awards. 8 weeks. After the doctor, his therapist has given up. He says, "Maybe you should take a pill." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's a pill that helps your body down." He actually said that singers use it. I said, "What are you talking about?" So then, we were very blessed to have a friendship with just, I think, the icon of the world, a man named Sidney Poitier, who I just have never seen a better speaker in my whole life. I've never seen anyone do anything better. And he had received the Thalberg Award, which is this more for acting, but it's the same thing. So he's a good friend. I thought, I'll go see him. He'll give me good advice. He said to me, "God, this isn't true." He said, "I remember when they told me I was receiving," this is Sidney Poitier. He said, "When I was receiving this award," he said, "I was up every night in the middle of the night for 8 weeks. I practiced my speech every night." He said, "I had a podium. Be sure you get a podium." He said, "I wrote it down. I was terrified. I will never accept another award." So I thought, well, if he's nervous, I can be nervous. So at any rate, backstage, before you get it, every single person that you think is so calm. I remember Gwyneth Paltrow was standing right before me, and she went, "Oh, I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous." I said, "That guy." And so, at any rate, once it was over, and I didn't fall, and I didn't drool, and all that things that I thought I would do, it was one of the greatest nights of my life.
Great time with you, Sherry, and I want you to hear what she said at the end of her acceptance speech. She said, "To the members of the Academy, thank you for this extraordinary award. I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to live up to it. That is so you, Sherry. Grateful, elegant, and classy. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank Carolyn. She's just the best.